Hi, this is Greg, and it's now part 8 of this belt grinder series. At the end of part 7, I promised I was going to make this platen and platen brackets, what seemed simple enough, but of course I made them fancier than I needed to be and made a couple of mistakes along the way as well that I'll show here. And I also need to remake this table support arm. I screwed up the grooves in it in the last part, and I also made the bracket that holds it about 3 thou oversize. So when I remake this, I'm going to make it 3 thou oversize to compensate. I wouldn't ordinarily start off by showing you how to just cut a piece of metal. I mean, this is the simplest thing possible, but just to show that there's nothing too simple that you can't screw up, right? So just in cutting this piece of 2x11 platen blank off this big hunk of 3/4 metal, of course I got a 4.5-inch depth of cut limit on this horizontal bandsaw. Now it's easy enough if a piece is less than 9 inches, say, which was easy enough there to cut that off to length. But now when I have to cut this 11.25-inch piece long, of course I can go from both sides as usual. In this case, the other side had a really rough cut. So flipping it over to get it vertical, I needed to clean up that rough cut first, and in order to do that I had to change the vice jaws and smooth the ends, and then I hit the limit of my depth here, so I had to flip it over. It was just one thing after another just to cause problems cutting this stupid hunk of metal off. Wasted so much time doing it. There I'm trimming off the last little bit of the edge. All this is just to get it smoothed out so I can get it into the horizontal bandsaw again, and as I cut down here I hit my depth of cut issue again, and it leaves about 2.5 inches in the center. Simple enough, grab the jigsaw, right? But nope, the curve's too wide, or the curve's too narrow. So here I am using my little Milwaukee grinder with a cutoff wheel to cut through that. It's got a nice thin kerf on it, but it just took forever to cut this piece of metal. I realized after I cut this whole thing that what a dum-dum I was. If I just turned this thing around in the horizontal bandsaw to grab the narrow edge, I probably could have avoided my depth of cut issue and gone all the way through it in one pass. Just so stupid. I'll know for next time. So then I had to take that platen and square it up as usual, get it all to shape and square it up and cleaned up. So I restored the vice jaws to the normal position and squared them up. And then milled down the edges with this 1/2-inch end mill. Get them nice and square and clean. And on the flat surfaces, after face milling them, I then followed up with a fly cutter to make it nice and, mirror smooth finish. I love the finish of this thing. And there you go. Now on to making the bracket itself. I'm going to use this 2x3 piece of angle iron rather than the 2 individual pieces that Phil used. So I've got the scrap, I just sort of clamp it into place, align it with the platen to be. That's where it's going to mount in its in-use position. So I clamp it in place, get it all squared up there, and then mark around on the angle iron where I need to make some cutouts for holes and for where these little decorative cutouts on the platen frame are. Those 45s and so on. And on the back side I mark the position of where the pivot point is, and that's going to be a slot cut out around where that bolt's going to go. And I use that for the 0, 0 reference position on this bracket for all the other parts that are made from that spot. It's an easy thing to align on in future. I'm just using a series of holes to cut off that 45. I couldn't get my bandsaw in there. Squaring things up. Doing the 45s, and flip it around and get it lined up again at 45, and do that 45 little cutout, and eventually get all the surfaces all cleaned up, and there's what we have. So put back onto the frame, and now I'm going to do a little fancy thing here for no particular reason other than it's fancy, is to make a little indent on the back of the platen. It's a 3/4-inch thick hunk of metal here, which is plenty big and thick. So I'm going to indent it to just make this bracket fit in there nicely. And so here I am marking it and then cutting it out. Oh yeah, and I found the turbo button on the mill. It's a little hidden button on the bottom there that probably no one knows about, and it makes the thing go 10 times faster. It's pretty amazing how you can clear chips out when that turbo button happens. So I'm going to use that a lot more from going forward. Here I am doing the chamfers around the edge of the turbo again, and it's just an amazing, amazing tool. Then face milling the bracket on all its surfaces, making them nice and clean and square. Oh yeah, this is funny. So here's another dramatic recreation of a stupid thing I did. At some point, I'd gone to sleep after a long night of work in here, and when I came back out to the garage, I had this bracket, for whatever reason, put together like this on my bench. I just left it that way, but it didn't fit nicely together in here because of the rounded bevel here on the angle bracket. So I quickly got to work. I said, hey, I'll make short work of that. And I put this big elaborate bevel in here. You know, it took many, many cuts to get down. I don't have a chamfer that big. So it took many cuts to get that down, but I did a beautiful job and put it together, and everything worked just great. And I said, oh shit, what a dum-dum. It doesn't go like that, of course. It goes like this. So that bevel is a totally wasted, stupid thing, making it weaker, although it's plenty strong. But tools historians are going to undig my belt grinder in 1,000 years and say, what the hell was he thinking there? Well, now you know. I guess the one good thing that came out of this little useless exercise, I learned how to use my small chamfer properly, where I can, step down 40 thou and over 40 thou as many times as I want to make as big a chamfer as I want. So now to attach the platen to this bracket, I'm going to use a series of 3 short slots, so this gives some adjustability back and forth of the platen. And so I use the DRO there to find the edge, and then I'm going to record all my DRO positions for the start and end of these 3 slots. I find it convenient just to use a Sharpie on the stainless steel trays that I have on either side of the mill here to record those positions. So there I'm marking start and drilling the end of this first slot. I won't bore you with the other ones. Basically I'm just positioning where they need to be, drilling the start and end, recording the DRO positions, moving over to the next one, drilling at start and end, again recording the DRO positions diligently, and so on for all 3 holes. When I flipped it over to gain access for the mill to get in there, didn't have quite enough depth for the cut. So I flipped it over and basically inversed my DRO positions, did a little bit of math there so I could come down to these same slot positions and mill them out into slots. So there we go. And now when drilling and tapping the holes in the platen, I sort of bias them to one side to give myself the maximum adjustability against that indent that I've got there. So using the DRO positions again, I drilled to M8 tap size here. Oh yeah, then I bought some big bottle of anchor lube to see if I liked it better than Tap Magic I've been using so far. Trying some holes here with anchor lube in steel, and it just doesn't work as well as Tap Magic in my opinion. I understand anchor lube is better for stainless steel, and I'll try it there when I get a chance. There it is assembled, and the adjustability works well. Then I have to attach the platen bracket to the platen frame, and basically following the same procedure. I put it into place, clamped it down there, marked some holes, then used my DRO to record the positions of the start and end of these slots as I drilled them out. I use the DRO incremental scale for my x-axis from that center pivot point, and then absolute on the y-axis from the front edge. Now luckily I didn't have to flip this one over to gain access with the mill, so I milled those slots out. Using the DRO positions, of course. And then for the platen frame holes, I need to drill and tap some holes here. Again, of course, I use the DRO position that I already recorded, using that center pivot point for the X scale, and appropriate positions for the Y to get these holes with maximum adjustability back and forth for the platen. So here I experimented with Tap Magic and Anchor Lube just to prove again that I prefer Tap Magic for tapping holes. Now this slot here I'm going to make a little wider. I decided I'm going to use make it clear the washer that's going to go under the bolt head that goes here. So just finding the center of that hole again. I used a boring head in the mill here to enlarge this circle out just larger than the washer size, and then came in with a mill to square up the edges. And there we have it. And there it is all assembled with the platen in place. And with the belt looking good. Now one of the reasons this video took so long to get out was I had a long Cancun vacation in the middle of here, which is lots of fun. And upon return, it was the last day of a Harbor Freight sale on this compressor that never goes on sale, so I had to buy it, put it in my closet, spent some time getting everything all hooked up and pressure tested and leak proof, and now I can use mist coolant a whole lot more on my videos. So here's a dramatic reenactment of a Eureka moment I had recently. Normally I would be using my tools like so to take off a tool and put a tool back in again, which takes, oh, I don't know, 30 seconds or so. And so I'd schedule my tool changes around, I do several operations with one tool, moving the DRO around, then change my tools. Anyway, there you go, on and off, right, for a tool. And then I thought, hey, it's time to build a power drawbar, right? I started looking at power drawbar setups and so on, with impact drivers and so on. Usually pneumatic impact drivers are used. And I thought, well, hey, I've got an impact driver. So I measured this, do a dramatic reenactment again. That's a half inch 8-point socket. Day later off Amazon. You don't even need a wrench on here because this thing drives so fast, right? Out it comes. And it goes, and it's in tighter than I do with my regular wrench. So this sort of takes the necessity of doing a power drawbar as an urgent project. I'll just keep that impact driver up there. Good Makita 12-volt deal, and it works really nicely. So I can just change tools at ease. Whatever I need to put in there. I don't have a mill around here right now, but I'll call it in anyway. So super easy. If I have to bump it down sometimes, this actually the back end of the Makita has a pretty good soft hammer on it. I'm not too worried about hurting it. So I will build a proper power drawbar here, powered by 12 volts. Eventually, I don't want to ruin my good Makita driver to do that. So I went out and bought a real cheapo Harbor Freight on sale 12-volt model here. I think this was 36 bucks with 30% off. It was like 28 bucks or something like that on sale about a week ago. So I'm going to tear that apart, take the guts out of it, build a proper drawbar thing, a power drawbar mechanism up here, so I can just use a single lever on and off. But really, this is so fast that it's sort of deprioritize that, I guess. I'll do that when I get around to it. Lots of other things to do that are more important. So anyway, that was just a Eureka moment. So simple to make your own little, poor man's power drawbar with an impact driver. Rather than heat treat harden the platen, I decided to put a ceramic glass insert into it. So here I am first chamfering the left front edge. The right front edge will stay unchamfered, a square edge. And I indented most of the platen front surface here, 2 inches wide, the width of the ceramic glass, to about a depth of about 1/8 of an inch. The ceramic glass is a little thicker than that. And I just tested its fit, and it fits beautifully. Sits a little bit proud. Then to secure it top to bottom, I made these 2 screw-on end caps. I made them both together out of a single piece of scrap 1/8" steel here. Just face milling the sides of these guys, and edge mill them, get everything all cleaned up as we always do. Squared them up. And then again, I'm making them both together, so here I am edge finding just to locate the holes for mounting these guys onto the platen. And then drill them out. I'm using M4 small cap screws to hold this thing in place, top and bottom. And then I recess those cap screws so they don't interfere with the tracking wheels. Recording those DRO positions, I'm going to need the holes in the platen too. I drilled and tapped that platen off camera, I guess. And here I am with the caps installed, just machining them off, flush with the platen. And then flipped over, chamfering the edges of them. So everything matches nicely. Trimming the front, let's make sure that ceramic stays proud of those end caps by a little bit. And there's the fit again, fits very nicely. And I put a pretty deep chamfer on the back sides of these caps and the platen itself to give plenty of clearance with those tracking wheels when they're adjusted to the most rearward position, when the platen is adjusted to the rearward position. Here's a big diversion. I had to remake that table support rod as I indicated earlier. So measured my oversized hole here, which was about 3 thou overs all, but that makes all the difference. It just would not clamp very well on that rod. I removed the original rod from its retention compound. Bought a new 1 1/4" stainless steel rod so that I could whittle it down to 1 3 thou oversize. I'm doing here, and I'm trying anchor lube on stainless steel. Yeah, it does make a bit of an improvement on the stainless steel cutting here. But I found that just machining the stainless, just lots of strings of very tough metal that you have to use pliers to keep pulling off. Finally skimmed down at this very close. I didn't want to go too small again, of course. I got a nice snug fit on that slightly oversized ID on that bracket. And then the end is going to get those brass end caps, so I'm drilling it out here for 8mm thread and tapping it for 8mm. And there's the knob, keeps the table secured from falling off. A little bit of polish here to make it nice and shiny. Now here's where I messed up on the first one badly. I had it in a jig that just wasn't secure enough, and as I cut the ball grooves it slipped and ruined my ball grooves. They were all crooked. So this time I'm making sure I get it right. Got it very well secured here in the vise, plus an end jack and a clamp. Making sure it's all square and true, and I found I had to adjust my vise a little bit to get this thing squared in here. Then I adjust the jacks for top and bottom squareness. I can make the jack a little taller, a little shorter. I can clamp down that clamp a little tighter to make it a little shorter. Anyway, I fiddled around with this for quite a while to make sure it's very square in both dimensions. Screw this up again. This is finding the center of it for the first groove. And then here we go. Oh, and I also bought good carbide ball end mills this time, before I had high-speed steel, which I'd have dulled at the end of my last cut. These carbide ones seem to be doing well. Zip down with the turbo button again. And I got a beautiful groove in there. And the fit is perfect, nice and secure and snug. And so then I rotated the rod 45 degrees, trued it all up again. I took that off camera. Lots of fiddling around here to get this thing perfectly square and true at 45 degrees. Milled that one, flipped it over, did the third one. Didn't show it. And then it fastens into that bracket with a 3/4" diameter rod. So what I'm doing here is whittling it down to 3/4" to fit just inside that 90-degree bracket. And rather than cutting it off here, I decided to take it over to the bandsaw to cut it off. It's a good enough job. Doesn't have to be perfect there, so it's going inside that bracket anyway. No one's going to see it. Well, another diversion here was making with this rod, and I had to flip it around. I needed to make it square, so I made this bump roller. I'll probably make a YouTube video of this, very short video of how I made that bump roller later on. Just showing it in action here, although not a very good demonstration because the rod was already pretty square here. But it works pretty well. Alright, so I've mounted my rod into the bracket. This is its natural neutral position. Clamped it down tight. I've adjusted my platen square and true to the idler arms, idler wheels here. Exactly where I want to have it. Square here, square here. This is in its 90-degree square position. And in this position, this is my reference surface. This is exactly square to the platen edge in that way, and exactly square to the platen surface in that way. So I'm going to use that reference surface. Remember, it rides on the bottom of the table here when this is put in. So I'm going to use that reference surface with this in its square position to retention compound this rod into place. So here goes nothing. First time and live on air. Lots of retention compound on there. This is going to be a tight, tight fit. So I'm going to drive it home. I hope I'm going to drive it home. Oh, I might have to take some more off of it. I might just have to take some more off of it. Let's see. Yeah, that's not going to go, I don't think, all the way. Oh, maybe. We're getting there. If I could tilt this thing up, get some more hammering on it. Maybe a bigger hammer. Should have thought of this. And I need a sacrificial piece of metal here to hammer on. Let's see if I can do it this way. Am I still in camera? I'm not. Push that back so I'm back in camera. Let's see if I can get it in this way. Of course, I'm banging the whole table away here. Oh, so close. Hey, it's just about there. Okay. I'm on my reference. That looks good. I think I've done it. I was square and true. That is lying flat on there, so I know that's square to the platen perfectly. And, oh, this is tilted. But that's perfectly now. These guys are come loose. Okay. That's not so important anyway. This is the important one. And that is square. And that is driven home. So cool. Brought a clamp here. Clamp her down onto the reference surface while the retention's compound cures. And I think we're good. All right, gonna leave that well enough alone. And then when it cures, I'll drill and tap my new hole through the rod so I can secure it. So now I need to get that secured with the 6mm socket cap screw in through that rod like it was before. Here I am using my little technique with a wiggler, totally out of focus, but just listening for the scratch, nice even scratch around the circumference to make sure I'm in the center. And I drilled it right through the rod into the backside with an M6 tap size, I think it's 5.4mm, and tapped it out to M6. As it was before, the original, blew it out. And I used a bit of Loctite and put it in with an M6 cap screw. So it's very secure, never going anywhere, and there's the final result. With that out of the way, I can finally get back and make some long T-slot inserts. That's the next project here, is to make some jigging for the table. So here I'm just squaring up a piece of material, center finding on it, so I can cut the T of that T-slot. And here I'm calculating the depth and width and compensating for the 1/2 inch end mill. And I actually did this in one pass, removing the material from both sides of that T. And it came out perfectly. Well, you got to love it when the math works out and the DRO works out. That's a absolutely perfect, pretty much zero tolerance fit, which is just what I wanted for that keyway there. Likewise in the horizontal, perfect fit, 0.546. And the depth is just perfect as well, just shy of the top surface there. All I have to do now is just trim, just about 10 thou off the depth of this thing so that it'll fit into that channel there, and then we'll be good to go. So a trivial little thing here to make a scribe tool that I can use in the mill to mark a center line. Just used a hand scriber here that I bought a bunch from Amazon, whittled its shaft down to 1/4 inch, and there it is. And the reason for it's come up here in a second. Here I am center finding one of those long T-slot parts. And then I can put the scribe tool into a 1/4 inch collet in the mill and mark the center point, just like that, nice and accurately. Then I put that part in the vise at a 45-degree angle to mill down to that scribe mark quite precisely. And flip the part over, another 45-degree adjustment there. Whittle it down again, so I have a perfect point on that. You'll see why in just a second. So I had fun, got a little carried away with these inserts, T-slots. So this long piece here, which I'll drill in regular pattern for tooling, has a point on it on the bottom, which indexes into this slider, which has a little notch in it. The idea being that with this slider in there, this slider will lock it in place so it can't move back and forth, okay? And then to keep this guy from coming out, I put a little lever on here to latch down there. So that can't slide, which means that can't slide. There'll be another lever on this side over here to hold this extra little piece in here, and I notched it so that it will slide in over top of there to make a seamless centerpiece here. And I have a couple of little pieces left over that I can use for tooling as well, either here or in the mill, because they're the same size. So that's it. That was kind of fun. And I'm making the L bracket here on the mill right now, so I'll take you over there next. So now I want to make some table fixturing jigs, and the first one's going to be an adjustable angle one. I'm going to cut this big hunk of 3x5 angle iron out and cut it down considerably. That's all I had. I think this is now 2x1.5. I milled off the surfaces. On this inside surface, I left that bevel for additional strength. And I milled the edges, make sure everything's all square, 90 degrees consistently, chamfered everything, and I've got a nice procedure now on how to get nice even chamfers all the way around. I'll probably make a short YouTube video on this sometime. Then I edge found to center find this pivot point. So I'm going to want to mount my rotary table next, but first I want to show you how I find the center, and before that I have to fix this little camera mount guy that I use to show over my right shoulder. Okay, so here we're looking at the coaxial indicator that I don't use very often, but it's very accurate, just to show you how to find the center when I'm mounting this rotary table to find its dead center. So basically you just rotate this guy around slowly inside the circumference of the hole and see that needle swinging wildly, and you just want to adjust the X and Y levers, dials, until you can slow down that movement. Whatever direction it takes to move that needle less is the right direction. So you keep just messing around with X and Y a little bit, with it running nice and slowly until you get that guy down within, let's say, 5 or 10 thou. There, I got pretty lucky there. I've got it way down. And then if you speed up the mill, it'll make the needle, vibrate more rapidly, so it makes it easier to see the finer adjustments here as you make the X and Y. And you can get it down really accurate. This towards the end of this, I'm getting it down to 1 thou, which is certainly good enough for this need. Then I zero my DRO, and we're ready to drill the center hole in this little piece of scrap metal I've got that's going to hold my bracket down. while I do it and keep it positioned up so I don't mill into my rotary table itself. Put some CA glue under there to hold it better. Secure it with a 6mm through the center. And I want to mill a slot around the the radius from that center point. So here I'm just figuring out what's the maximum radius I can get without hitting that corner bevel thing. And then I adjusted it inward just a bit to a nice round number. And I screwed up here. I shouldn't have used 1.6. I should have used 1.5. I'm going to always regret that, but hey. So here I am drilling the end hole, and I tap it on one side so I can get some additional security here to keep this thing from rotating while I'm milling it out. I should have actually tapped it on both sides, but I didn't think about it until too late. So now drilling a series of holes around the outside edge just saves some wear and tear on the mill bits themselves. And then I can start with a little small mill, just one of my smallest, to very carefully, gingerly mill around the outside edges here. I'm opening it up to just over 6mm. I'm going to use a 6mm bolt in here to hold it down, so a little larger than 6mm. Bringing it off camera there so I can give it a little look, and there it is. So that slot radius on the fixture jig again was 1.6 inches, so I'm going to make a series of holes at 0.8 inches along my T-slots. First I experimented with a Sharpie on best positioning, and here I am finding the center of that little notch. I'm going to use that as my zero position for my DRO to cut my first hole, drill my first hole, 5.4mm for an M6 tap. And I keep moving over 0.8 inches in either direction, drill all those tap size holes and come back and tap them out. Now using a tap follower here to make sure everything's nice and square. Tap all of those holes in that part and then repeat for all the other parts, of course. Here I am with the smallest little T-slot part here, finding the center of a punch mark I put on it for its first position. And then go over 0.08 inches again to drill and tap it and chamfer them all as well. And there's all three parts drilled and tapped. And now I'm going to make a non-adjustable guide for the table, so it can't get bumped out of position is the point. So with the other half of that piece of angle iron that I cut off earlier, I'm just cleaning up all its surfaces. On this one I'm going to mill right into that corner to make it nice and crisp and square, because I want to use the inside as a carrier here if I want for my parts. So I'm getting rid of that little bevel on the inside. Squaring the edges again so everything's 90 degrees, chamfering everything again nice and consistently at 40 thou, let's say. Again, I'll probably make a short video of how to do this consistently. I do relieve the inside corner there so I can get a part right into the corner. There I'm testing with a little square there to make sure there's no rocking, and I had to refine it a little bit to make sure it's completely square. Prepping another piece of material for a holder piece here. This is a really rough offcut, so it took a lot of passes to get this guy smoothed up. Here it is almost finished now, cut to length, and now I'm just bringing it down to the 543, I think it is keyway size. This piece is going to fasten into the bottom of that L bracket. Make a little slot here so it's always in the same position. I'm cutting that to exactly the same width of that piece I just cut, 545 it is. I did that in one pass. The fit is perfect, nice and tight. And I drilled some holes in it at, of course, the consistent 0.8 centers again. And I drilled into my 1, 2, 3 block there by accident. Finding the edges so I can find the center holes, drill into this insert piece as well, and tap them out at 0.8 centers again, of course. Okay, let's wrap this up with showing what I've done. So I made this bracket. It has the 3 slot adjustments in and out, and 3 slotted adjustments back and forth, so I can square up my platen to the tracking wheels here, which I've done. I've got a glass ceramic glass on the front of it here for abrasion, and it's just proud of the tracking wheels. It's not actually attached to the platen just yet. It's got a one-time use VHB tape on the back of it I don't want to waste, because I want to glue this before I actually stick it on there. Right now it's just held in place by the table itself, and top and bottom by these caps. Okay, and then over on the table, Of course, I made these T-slots that lock in place with a little lever over here that holds this one in, that holds this one in. Then I made this adjustable jig that you can lock in place with a simple screw there, any place you want. You can move this around any of these holes, back and forth. This hole lines up with these horizontal, so you can do it that way as well. Just lots of adjustment here. Or you could remove this slot here, just unlock this, which lets this thing then slide out. And then I made this fixed jig that's fixed at 90. It'll slide in and out there too, and it's perfectly square with the world, you know, perfectly square with the platen, that way, this way, everywhere you can imagine, and it can't get out of true. It's got the same pattern of holes, so it can mount in these slots as well, and this slider can move back and forth if it gets in the way, anywhere you want. I do plan, and I just ordered flat head screws here so I can countersink them in with 82-degree countersink, so that'll be flush. And the point is that I've made this thing perfectly square with a notch in there too, so there's no interference. So I can get a part in there as well and use this as a carrier if I want to. I can either put a part on this side to go in and out, or I can use a part on this side to go in and out. And of course the table can move back and forth to square it whatever you want on the platen there. So if I stayed in frame, I think that's it. Next steps will be finishing this whole thing with the bluing and powder coating and some paint. And I guess that's it. I'll see you in the next chapter. One other thing I missed. I had originally intended with this slider to make a 45-degree channel in here as well, so that this part could then slide at 45 degrees up against the platen as well. But then I got thinking, no, I'd really rather make a dedicated 45-degree slider instead, because the geometry would be different. I'd rather have 45 degrees coming out here on the channel, or vice versa. It might be 45 degrees this way, and you'd want a 45-degree dedicated one with triangle shape in there. So lots to do, but I think I'm going to keep this one dedicated for the plain 90 and make other jigs as appropriate in the future. So for the next and possibly final part of this project, I'll make some more jigs and then do the finishing, which is bluing and powder coating and painting. Hope to see you then. Bye for now.